Heyo, Omni Dogs and Omni Kittens. It's Omni Dog here with an overview of The Authority. And I've already taken the dust jacket off because it's just easier that way. This is by Warren Ellis and Mark Millar, or Mark Millar. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to call him Mark Millar because it's easier. The first half of this book, and as you can tell, it's got a very nice inner cover. I will very carefully show you the back. It's very cool. And the first 12 issues are by Warren Ellis, and they are typically Warren Ellis brilliant. And let me deal with this flippin' dust jacket. Take it easy, dust jacket. The first issues, this is from DC Wildstorm. DC bought Wildstorm back in 1999. And as you can see, it's got a lot of good authors. Warren Ellis and Mark Millar are the ones who did the bulk of the work. Tom Payer wrote some stuff. Joe Casey, Paul Jenkins, Docell Young, and the two main, well, look at the top four artists. Bryan, Hitch, Frank Quitely, Dustin Nguyen, and Arthur Adams did an issue. And then you got John McCrae, Phil Jimenez, and some other artists that you'll know. And the coloring is brilliant. And this is one of my favorite books. So this is an overview and a review because I love this book. And I highly recommend it. I'm not even going to wait till the end of the review to tell you to buy it because it is a wonderful book. It is excellent, and it is sparklingly written by Warren Ellis. It is very well written by Mark Millar. Warren Ellis at the top of his game. It's about a you can't even call them superheroes. I think they're meta-humans who are out to change the world and make it a better place. And they deal with threats that you never even thought possible. I just bumped the camera, sorry. But they've got these two guys on the ground. Now, it started out at Wildstorm, before DC bought it, as a book called Stormwatch. And I will get into that in later videos. You do not need to read Stormwatch to enjoy this book or even understand it. This book can be read on its own, and you don't need to. You can read Stormwatch later, and I'm going to make a separate video on Stormwatch and other books that are connected to the Authority. You don't need to read Stormwatch to understand this book at all. It kind of gives it a foundation, but the characters, a couple characters carry over, but you don't need it at all. And I just read Stormwatch, and so I know what I'm talking about. These two characters are in Stormwatch, but they're ground support now. This is Jenny Sparks. She's considered the spirit of the 20th century. She was born in 1900, and she's living electricity. She's the leader of the Authority. And as you can tell, look at this artwork. It is flipping gorgeous by Bryan Hitch. You've got the shaman, the doctor, who is capable of warping reality itself. You've got the engineer. She switched out all her blood for 9 pints of nanotechnology. There's Jenny Sparks again. And, of course, the famous Midnighter and Apollo. Apollo's the sun god. He's the Superman analogy. And he's the Batman analogy, except he will tear your face off. He will rip your face off. He will kill you. He knows what you're going to do in a fight before you even do it. He is so well trained that the fight's over before it even starts. He knows all the moves you're going to make. And he is incredible. These two guys are great. They're also a couple, And we're going to get into that later because there's some interesting stuff that happens and some interesting stuff that didn't happen because of editorial control. But here's their ship, the Carrier, and it is a living, breathing organism that was just abandoned, and it goes through dimensions and lives in a section of space called the Bleed, which is where multi-dimensions, parallel Earths, everything can be accessed in the Bleed, and the Bleed is more of a concept than a thing. And they orbit up around the Earth, but the ship likes to stay. The ship likes to stay in orbit around the Earth. It will move, but it is a thing unto itself. And this thing is like 50 miles by 100 miles, and there are places in it the Authority haven't even seen yet. And they access it. I'll show you later how they access it once we come upon it. And here's Jack Hawksmoor. He is been abducted by aliens all through his life, starting as a little kid, and had all his organs replaced so that he's most comfortable in cities. He breathes pollution and breathes out fresh air. He is in touch with cities and knows how they live and breathe. And let's see, we're missing Swift. We haven't come upon her yet, but we will. And so this is typical of the kind of mayhem that you will see in this book that you don't see in normal superhero books. Oh, here's Swift right here. She's winged with claws on her feet, can fly, and can beat the heck out of you. This is the kind of thing, as a reader of comic books for like 54 years, this is the kind of thing I need right now. I'm a little bored with regular superhero comics and certain codes and things that superheroes have. I'm ready for some head bashing. And these guys come in and just kick ass. And see, here's Jenny Sparks lighting everybody up. These are the bad guys. And this is it's very bloody. And here she is saying game over with her team. And so it's very bloody. I'm not going to lie to you. It's bloody. No bad guy is safe. They come down to Earth to protect Earth and make change and overthrow governments, bad governments, and they're not subtle. So as you can see, the art is gorgeous. And when they need to get to the ship, when they need to get off the ship, they say door. And a door will open and take them back to the ship. And I'm trying to get a picture of a door opening. I will eventually. And there's typical Ellis high concepts, but not too high concept, not like Planetary. Where it's really high concept and can take you a little while to get through. This is very easy to understand. I read this whole thing in a day, and it's easy to get through, and it's very fun to get through because it's just a blast to read. Jenny Sparks has to think fast on her feet because there's always a crisis brewing. If not there, a parallel Earth is coming into view or something's happening somewhere. And so she's got to figure things out. So there's always some things going on. And it's not always, some radical guy like this that's trying to be a terrorist on the Earth. Sometimes it's governments themselves that are trying to go after them. They answer to the UN, but sometimes America doesn't care for them and tries to mess with them or other governments. So let's see, there's Jenny Swift in action. I'm sorry, Swift in action. And here's Midnighter deciding he's going to bring the ship in to destroy this guy's secret headquarters. And Midnighter says, "I love being me." And he just takes out the guy's evil headquarters. So I don't want to get into spoilers, but that's spoiling it. Well written, incredibly well drawn. Ellis's run is, now this is a parallel Earth that intends to invade our planet, and I'm not going to mince words here. It's an English government in this parallel Earth. It's an English court that is run in Sicily on this parallel Earth with aliens who are having a hard time breeding, and so they create rape camps, and they want to invade our Earth and turn it into a rape planet. And Jenny Sparks has previous experience with them, dating back to the early part of the 20th century. Look at that. Look at that shot. And look at these shots right here. And so she knows how to deal with them after a fashion. But this, while I'm not a big fan of using, rape as a tool to move a story forward, that's a terrifying thing, and I understand its use. These aliens want to come turn the Earth into a rape camp and try to breed their alien turn us into breeding stock. And here's the greatest line in the entire book. As the aliens are invading, Jack Hawksmoor and Midnighter say, "Hello, welcome to Los Angeles. We're here to hit you." I love that. So, Warren Ellis, I can't say enough about this half of the book. He writes the first 12 issues. Everything's remarkable. Everything's brilliant. You're going to love it. It's just unbelievably remarkable. So I don't want to, and there's a planetary crossover right here. So I don't want to show you anymore because I don't want to wreck it. But I will take you to something that I hadn't read before, and that is Jenny Sparks' The Secret History of the Authority. Now this is a really good story. It's by John McCrae and David Barron. And I think it's 5 issues, and I had never read it before, and it's about the secret history of Jenny Sparks and the Authority. And it's all about Jenny Sparks, who is a kick-ass, strong female protagonist, and she is awesome. And this is well worth the book. I'm really happy that they included this in the book. So this is a 5-issue miniseries in here, and it features a lot of familiar faces. But it is really a great miniseries. So then we will get to doink, da doink, da doink. We get to Mark Millar's run, which has, for a while, now some people can take or leave Frank Quitely's art. I happen to like it. Some people don't. That's going to be up to you. And Mark Millar, some people can take or leave. I think this is some of his strongest work that he's done in this book. But he does do something that I kind of had an issue with. He turns the Authority into rock stars, sort of, and puts them on covers of magazines, has them come down to Earth, be famous, try to engage with the public more. And didn't really, and I didn't really connect with that part. But it's a small part of the story, and you can get over it because I got over it. But this is also where they they start to. Now that's interesting because in the comics they ran into in the comics when they were printed they they censored this. He had on shorts, and because they didn't want him naked, there was a lot of editorial interference with these books, with Mark Millar's run. For instance, back here, it said, okay, now I'm going to see the Shield and the Wasp. This is like a Captain America cover. This guy had a robe on like Thor. Those were gone in the comics when they were printed. Paul Levitz was the editor at the time, and he felt that that was too much like Marvel. So that stuff didn't exist. It's been reintroduced into the comics, so you're getting this as it was originally intended, which is great, because there was a lot of editorial manipulation back then when this book was being printed in single issues. The other, I had just seen it. Jakarta was changed to, I don't know, Eastern Asia. And which one of you girls is President Habibi was changed to which one of you is the president. Because that was actually the name of the president of Jakarta, Indonesia, or wherever Jakarta is. I apologize. My geography is not the best. And that was the actual president at the time of that country. And DC editorial had a problem with that, and they changed it because they shoot him dead, or whatever they do here. They shoot the others dead, and they deal with him in a rough way. But there were a ton of changes in Mark Millar's book because Paul Levitz didn't like it at all. He had a problem with Mark Millar's, a lot of it. And a lot of it was changed in single issues, but you're getting the whole thing as it should be in this Omni, which is great. And the Frank Quitely art is as it should be. And there are no more changes, so it's great. They get overthrown by governments, and they put a new team in their place, and the old authority are reduced and humiliated, and it's a whole story of how they get back to their original forms, how they get back. The governments on Earth create a super soldier to take them out and humiliate them and rob them of their memories. And after a bunch of other stuff happens, that happens later in the book. But the main point is that see, these are the fake authority that take over after the real authority has been defeated, and then the real authority eventually gets their memory back. And I don't want to go into any spoiler details, but it's actually very interesting. It's actually very good. The authority goes through numerous changes, and it's kind of uplifting how they reassert themselves and get themselves back together. And I'm happy to say the story has a bang up boss bitchin' ending that is utterly kick-ass and worth it. I have a bookmark here because it's interesting. here's the Midnighter guarding a baby. When you read the book, you'll understand why the baby's important. Midnighter escaped the humiliation, and he's been on the run for a number of months with the baby, taking care of her. And here's the evil creature they created to wipe out the Authority. But this is issue 28. And Mark Millar had serious health problems around this time and got Grant Morrison to take over and write this issue. So Grant Morrison actually wrote this issue, not Mark Millar, uncredited. And as a matter of fact, this is an issue that starts out with the new shaman doctor replacement is trying to create one religion. And Grant Morrison had something very controversial planned and for that religion issue. And DC immediately took it out. And that was not replaced in here. That never even made it to the comic book. But this apparently, Grant Morrison was never paid or anything. And so he went to Wildstorm eventually and said, hey, can I get paid for this story that I did? And Mark Millar got really frosted with it, apparently, because he thought it was just a friend helping out a friend. And that apparently is where the real rift came between Morrison and Millar. According to my sources, which include Near Mint Conditions, Omar. All of this Wildstorm information that I have, actually, I can source back to Omar. He deserves credit for all of this stuff. Although, I will say, I just discovered myself that all this stuff had been put back in the Omnibus. I wasn't aware that it had been taken out, and I just discovered that it had been put back in the Omnibus. But Omar deserves full credit for alerting me to this controversy that had happened with Millar and Morrison and Paul Levitz editing Mark Millar so heavily. So this apparently is where the rift originally came from, issue 28 of The Authority. So this is where I'm going to end the overview and the review, because this leads directly into the end of the book, and I don't want to spoil it for you because it is a great ending, and this book is great. I think Mark Millar's some of his strongest writing, except that this is Grant Morrison right here. But it's a good issue, 28 by Grant Morrison, and I highly recommend you get this book. And then I'm going to be doing a side video of other books that you can read after this that deal with other characters in the Authority, other stories about the Authority, and things like that. There are plenty of other books out there that if you like the Authority, there's more to read. And I have been reading them all, and they're really good. And I highly recommend those, and that'll be a separate video. So, that was my overview and review. This book is brilliant. I highly recommend you get it. I highly recommend you read it and love it and keep it and reread it. I'm going to reread this thing just like I'm going to reread Planetary in another couple years, or maybe 6 months or so. So as usual, please leave a comment, please leave a like, please leave a please subscribe, and peace and love, peace and love. Thank you for watching.